The fight for Sherwood Forest on battleground Britain has begun as Labour and the Conservatives fight it out in Nottinghamshire to determine who will be crowned the next Robin Hood. The Tories currently control all of Nottinghamshire's parliamentary seats except for 3, which are held by Labour. And in May, residents of both Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire will go to the polls in an historic vote on the East Midlands first mayor. So who could be the Robin Hood and who will take on the role of the Sheriff of Nottingham? Here to help us rewrite that story is our panel, political commentator Chloe Dobbs, Deputy Political Director of the Centre for Social Justice, Sophia Warringer, and broadcaster and historian Rafe Hadel-Manku. Welcome to all of you. We've seen various sort of incarnations over the weekend of Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. My favourite was Keir Starmer not stopping the football as it was going past him into the goal over the weekend when he was playing for his local team. But, you know, I'm not sure being painted as Robin Hood or the Sheriff of Nottingham is particularly good for either of them, is it?
Well, it will be interesting to see what happens there. There's nothing, for me, I don't know about you guys, but I don't find it that impressive, politicians turning up in suits to play football.
No.
There's just something very strange about politicians trying to play sport in suits. Except Boris does seem to do it quite
He seems to do it. Well, I mean, to be fair to Keir Starmer, I mean, he does actually play football for a team. He just doesn't seem to be very good at it.
No.
You know, I mean, they got beaten 14-8 in their latest encounter, which is not exactly a great football score.
But anyway, jokes aside, do they really need another mayor here? Sounds like the councils have all gone bankrupt there. Have they got money to put in a mayor as well? Is that just not going to be putting a Band-Aid on a big funding problem?
I mean, I just don't think there's much point in doing anything at the moment, apart from talking about this big Horizon story. Sophia, you know, it seems to be dominating everything. Rishi Sunak's having to talk about it. Keir Starmer's going to have to say something about it as well, isn't he?
Yeah, and this story shows the power of capturing the public's imagination for pushing through change. It wasn't until we had this amazing ITV programme that showed the story of the people who've missed out and whose lives have been ruined because of this scandal that the politicians suddenly were captured by the attention, even though the investigation has been going on for 4 years now. It's now that it's in the public culture that, as you say, tomorrow maybe the Parliament is going to be bringing through laws to change it so there are convictions can be overturned more quickly. So it does show the power of culture and TV and telling the story to change things in Westminster. And that's not really how it should be. It shouldn't be responding to dramas on the television.
Well, that's the thing. And Rafe, I was saying this to our previous guest, that, you know, this is a great sort of highlighted story as to how politics in this country is kind of broken and how there isn't anybody who seems to be being held responsible. There isn't anybody in either party, or even the Lib Dems either, who's willing to hold their hands up and go, yeah, we got this massively wrong. I haven't heard anybody saying that.
Well, it's part of our culture, isn't it? Remember, after the financial crash, how few bankers were actually held to account for what they did as well. And what's so equally depressing and scandalous about this story is that our government is only a reactive government. Why did it take so long? Is it up to broadcasters to actually, raise the interests of the public? You know, this was known for so long. There have been so many campaigns about this, and yet our politicians only seem to act when it's in their own interest to do so. You know, Rishi Sunak only came late to the legal immigration issue once numbers got so high that the media began to get involved in all of this, and we're seeing it yet again. I think it's disgraceful. I mean, I also think Ed Davey needs to speak up as well, because of course he was minister in 2010. So it's not just the Tories and the Labour Party who are actually
they're all
need to speak about
tarred by the same brush, really, aren't they? That is really the problem. But again, you know, you've got all sorts of things going on that people are concerned about. You know, Keir Starmer goes up to wonder about where the floods are happening and makes out that it's all the fault of the Tory party. Well, it's not plainly the fault of the Tory party. The reason that places flood in this country is because nobody's taken any care to make sure they don't. And they've actually encouraged environmental protection rules which make it easier for places to flood.
Yeah, it seems like in almost every single area in this country, every single policy area, politicians act with very short-term thinking. It's just putting a Band-Aid on a problem at the last minute when it all goes wrong. It's not just flooding, it's healthcare, it's schools with crumbling concrete. If you remember that story.
Story's gone away, hasn't it? Nobody talks about schools.
But everything, we've just waited until everything goes wrong rather than actually, you know, putting in place long-term policies to stop these big issues like flooding happening in the first place. It's absolutely disgraceful, and I don't see the problem going away anytime soon, because because we've left it so long, we'd need so much public money to start fixing all of these problems and putting in long-term plans for all of them all at once. If we had gradually put in place long-term solutions for all these different policy areas, we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in today.
It makes you think, doesn't it, Sophia, what exactly the politicians have been doing for the best part of the last 20 years? Because if they haven't been making sure that flooding doesn't happen, and they haven't been making sure that, the immigration numbers are under control, and they haven't been keeping an eye on the post office scandal, what have they actually been doing? I mean, Rishi Sunak came out and actually said today, well, people want me to continue with the plan. I don't know what the plan is. Do you?
Well, I think the Labour Party, if they form the next government, will find that being in opposition is a lot easier than being in government.
Yeah.
And it's easy to throw stones from the outside and to talk about the need for long-term planning. But when you're actually in the decision seat and you have to make the choice between spending now on issues that are pressing and spending on issues which you won't see the fruit for 10, 15 years' time, often the now will win out. And that's difficult, and that's what governing is. It's making those difficult decisions. And I think the Labour Party are waking up to the idea that this will be very difficult, and you can see them therefore not wanting to make those commitments in policy in terms of spending, because they are concerned that when they actually, if they do, get into the governing seat, it's going to be very difficult for them too.
It will be. Peter Bone, let's talk about him, shall we, Rafe? He's another one of these Tory MPs who seems to have a girlfriend who wants to run in his place. It happened to the Elphics down in, it was his wife actually, wasn't it, down in Dover. Peter Bone's got a girlfriend called Helen, who apparently has been selected by the local Conservative Association to stand in his stead.
Well, he's certainly very good at keeping it in the family.
He is.
His wife was employed as his executive secretary. She's employed as his assistant parliamentary advisor.
Right.
And now it seems as if, she's going to inherit or succeed to his position. Now, of course, Peter Bone's very much on side politically with myself. Yeah. I don't know how well liked he is in his constituency, but it seems to be that there was a fear that if he ran as an independent, he would split the vote.
Yes.
And that he was only willing to not stand as an independent if this sort of, if this was given to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
But, it must stink to high heaven, surely, in that constituency. It's another question of, jobs for the boys, backhand
it's
deals.
It's an entitled view of the world, isn't it? Well, if I can't do it, then somebody I really know well, or even my partner, could do it.
Yeah, it really seems like nepotism. There is a lot of people do have this view of the Tories and Tory MPs in particular that it's the old boys. I mean, I know the partner is a girl, but you get the point.
Yeah.
It really seems like nepotism. And I mean, do a favour to the party and step back when you've put the party into a scandal and put them in a bad light. Just live a quiet life. Let them get on, choose another candidate that has nothing to do with you.
Although the new candidate for that seat was chosen by the local association, let's not forget.
Yeah.
So there was a democratic process that was followed. And I imagine CCHQ, maybe that wasn't their first choice candidate, but the democratic process rolled through and that was who came forward as the front runner. So I don't think it's quite as clear-cut as nepotism.
No, well, it's telling that Richard Sunak today refused to endorse the candidate. He was asked point blank in a media scrum, and he said, well, it was the free decision of the local
as it
office.
Should be.
As he said,
I think that's
exactly,
the
but
thing.
it does stink of a rotten borough,
But there are people who think that Peter Bone's been stitched up as well. I mean, regardless of whatever the allegations are, we don't really know the ins and outs, which we're never allowed to find out. But there are people in his own, constituency
that's why I say I don't
who
know,
think that he's been given a bit of a rum deal.
That's why I say I don't know how well liked he is in the constituency. It may be that he was actually going to be a very real threat if he ran as an independent. Right. He's got a 5-digit lead in his majority, but of course we've seen several 5-digit
that doesn't mean a thing now,
results
no,
be overturned.
Not. Well, listen, thank you guys.